Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to episode number 52 of the Primetime Rundown, powered by StreamYard, right here on the Eastern Observer, I-95 Sports Network, and Zingo Television, channel 190. Alongside Rob DeLuca, our guest, I'm Ian Schraier. We can't thank our audience enough for tuning into our specials the last few weeks, but it is good to be back live with you on this Friday, April the 2nd. And we don't want to forget, we are presented to you by Black Cats NYC. They recently dropped their new album, Free Cake, which is available for download on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, and Spotify. And don't forget, you can stay tuned to all things Primetime Rundown by downloading our podcast in the iOS and Google Play stores, or subscribe to us on Spotify or iHeartRadio. You can also find us on YouTube by typing in I-95 Sports Network in the search bar and check out all of our programming that way. Rob, as we get going here, it's been a few weeks since we've actually been live here on the Primetime Rundown. Our last few weeks, we've run a few specials, but this is the first time in just about a month that we're live. So how has your last few weeks been?
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, all sports coming back. We had some baseball, some nice opening day. The March Madness tournament has been awesome. But nothing really beats coming live here with you every Friday. We've got a great guest with us. This is going to be one hell of a show.
With no Joey Jarzynka in the chair, we're very excited to welcome in our special guest who's making his debut tonight on the Primetime Rundown, a former graduate assistant in the athletic communications office at St. John's University, and now a writer for Fansided, Nick Diamanis. Nick, thank you for taking some time with us tonight.
Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
No, it's a pleasure to have you, and we're so excited. We hope everybody can join the conversation. Drop a comment in the comment box. We have a lot to get to, a little bit of March Madness. Opening day has come and gone, so we definitely want to touch a little bit upon that, and some news in the National Football League as well. But ladies and gentlemen, let's get right to it. I have two college basketball fans sitting right next to me, as well as myself. So I got to ask the two of you guys first. How many teams, as we're getting ready for this Final Four, how many of you guys still have teams left in your Final Four that are playing this weekend?
Yeah, I've got two. I've got my championship game still intact. I've got Gonzaga and Baylor. So with Baylor winning, so we'll see if I stay right. Can't wait for tomorrow night. Gonna be very exciting.
Nick, how about you?
I only have Gonzaga left. I had Ohio State actually in my Final Four, so that ruined the majority of the tournament this year. I had Alabama in my other side facing Gonzaga, and I also had Illinois going to the Final Four. So pretty rough this year, but I honestly think, the more unpredictable the Final Four and the tournament is as a whole, the better it is for everybody watching. So I'm not too upset about anything.
So Loyola, Chicago, and UCLA aren't making your life very easy right now.
Yeah, it was funny. I was having a little dashboard meeting with the people at Fansided, and I knew that Loyola Chicago was going to give Illinois its toughest time in that side of the bracket, and let alone I was correct there. I just love the way that they matched up against Illinois. I thought Krutwig and was going to be, an incredible matchup with Cockburn. That whole team just played so well that game. It was unfortunate that they couldn't bring that in their next round. But it's been an incredible tournament so far, and I think tomorrow is going to be, it's going to add even more to that.
Gentlemen, our Final Four schedule is set. As Rob and Nick were both alluding to, the first game will be pretty much a battle for Texas bragging rights, as it'll be number one Baylor, taking on number 2 Houston at 5:14, followed by the game that I think most of the fans are waiting for to see if maybe number 1 undefeated Gonzaga goes down against number 11 seeded UCLA, and UCLA will be the 5th number 11 seed to make the Final Four, Loyola Chicago being the most recent in 2018. And we also can't forget back in 2006 when George Mason made their miraculous run to the Final Four. All games will be played at Lucas Oil Stadium. Nick, I want to start with the newbie here because I want to ask, just knowing your college basketball knowledge, is there anyone at this point, in your opinion, that's left between UCLA and the winner of the Baylor-Houston game that can stop Gonzaga at this point?
Well, I think it's going to be incredibly tough for any of those three teams to just play a full 40 minutes with Gonzaga, just the way that they compose themselves on offense. This is a team that has shot the ball over 50% from the floor in all but one game this year, which is incredible. It's going to take a team to score at least 90 points, in my opinion, for them to knock off the Bulldogs. UCLA's got their hands tied a little bit. They're going to need a really big performance from Juzang and Campbell and start off strong. You saw in the couple of games this tournament, Oklahoma, for example, started off the game really hot, first 10 minutes, running up and down the floor with the Bulldogs. UCLA is going to have to do the same thing, and they have the guys capable of doing that, and they play really phenomenal defense as well. So it really depends on how the first 10 minutes go, and I know that's going to be a factor going into the other game as well with Houston and Baylor. So, if you can stop their three top scorers in Kispert, Timmy, and Suggs, they may have a shot at making it a close game, coming down the stretch. But I think Gonzaga is they have 6 quality scorers. It's going to be tough for anybody to make a run at a championship.
And another key player for UCLA that's been big in their run as well has been, in addition to Juzang as well, has been Jaime Jaquez as well. Rob, Gonzaga has not surrendered the number 1 national ranking all season long. They're the first team since the 2015 Kentucky Wildcats to be heading into the Final Four as the number 1 nationally ranked team in the country, as well as having an undefeated season. Gonzaga, the number 1 scoring offense in the entire country, averaging a shade over 90 points per game. Do you agree with Nick's point that Gonzaga is unstoppable, or is it UCLA or a Baylor Houston that you think could stop them?
Look, Nick makes a ton of great points. He's not wrong whatsoever. What it comes down to with Gonzaga is themselves at this point. Can they finally overcome what I guess at this point can be considered the Gonzaga jinx, where they had teams in the past that were considered to be championship worthy, and they just couldn't even remotely sniff it. They always found a way to choke in the tournament, but now they're finally in the Final Four again, and it's going to be very interesting to see what will happen. I think that Gonzaga is definitely going to win this game against UCLA. I personally have Baylor beating them in my bracket. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. As Nick said, Baylor's going to have to bring their offense if they want even a remote chance at this, because Gonzaga scores at will. It seems like they could, if they were to go down 10, as we saw in the their conference championship game against BYU. They were down big, and then they come back and they win by double digits. So it's a team that is resilient. This is the best Gonzaga team ever, if you ask me. No team in school history has ever been like this. I don't think anyone will ever come close to it again, personally, in Gonzaga. But I think overall, I do see Baylor being able to do it. I think Gonzaga's just gonna. It's hard to break. It is very tough to break a curse, and I think it's gonna live for one more year.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to compare them maybe to the 2017 team that lost to North Carolina in the national championship, because this Gonzaga team is just so dominant. Nick, I want to get back to something you had mentioned about UCLA and their path to getting here. I mean, not only were they a team that everyone felt shouldn't have been in there, that maybe the committee felt when they made up that first 4 meeting between UCLA and Michigan State, that it was just a chance to get 2 blue bloods in there to face each other before we got to the round of 64 and to increase TV ratings. But I think they've shown that UCLA and that entire Pac-12 conference has just been such a contending conference within the tournament. But can enough be said on UCLA's front after the win over Alabama, after the win against Michigan? Can enough be said, and we're going to mention the 2 names that we mentioned before, can enough be said about the performances about Juzang and Jaquez? Because can they be giant killers in your opinion and beat Gonzaga?
They absolutely could be. And like I said, the first 10 minutes, we will see a lot of what they bring to the table. It's going to be an interesting atmosphere with, just the full stadium as opposed to the half and half that they've done the first 2 weeks of the tournament. So you might have different shooter's eye for those guys. Juzang, Campbell, Jaquez, all those guys, have been incredibly reliable on both sides of the floor, and that's what's been really important for Mick Cronin's side. They're going to have to stop whoever's hot at the time. Now, Gonzaga's got a ton of weapons. They're going to have to worry about the 3-point shooting from Kispert and Suggs and Nephard. They're going to have to control the perimeter as well as the inside with Timmy as well. So it really depends on how they start on the floor. If they get rattled early, it could be a runaway by the time it's halftime. But UCLA has been determined all 4 of their games so far this year. It can happen at any time. Excuse me, it's 5 with the playing game. Yeah, it's incredible that you forget about that playing game, but it's, that's where it all started. They were down 11 in that game with Michigan State. But again, that point being said, they've got determination. They've been a motivated bunch this entire tournament. I didn't think it happened.
I don't disagree with your point about Gonzaga, so I'd be safe in saying that in both of your opinions that Gonzaga will play for the national championship on Monday night.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Gentlemen, let's move over to the earlier game, the game between Baylor and Houston. Baylor being the number 1 seed, Houston being the number 2. We've seen a lot of games out of Houston where they're the number 2 scoring defense in the entire country, but we've seen them trail and we've seen them have to fight back, especially in the game against Rutgers that Rutgers had with a couple of minutes to go. They blew a 17-point lead against Oregon State, nearly lost that game. So as I said, they do have that number 2 scoring defense going for them, but Rob, is it a stretch to say that this is Baylor's game to lose, though?
It's not necessarily a stretch. Baylor's obviously the favorite here, but Houston's been getting underappreciated, underrated, underlooked all season long. A lot of people did not have Houston in the Final Four. I know I certainly didn't. I thought Oklahoma State was going to do it, and they were upset in round number 2. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, Houston played hard teams outside of their first game against Cleveland State, but after that, they had some really tough battles. They had a tough battle against Rutgers, managed to come out of that one alive, and onwards after that, it's been dogfight after dogfight. Houston can keep up with any team in the nation, and I would include Gonzaga in that because they're just so feisty. They're just so determined. That's a word I'll use here. They're determined to prove people wrong. People didn't think, Houston, they overrated them a few years ago. A lot of people thought they could make a deep run a couple years back. They choked almost immediately. And this time they're determined. I really like Houston as a team. However, I do think it is safe to say that it's Baylor's game to lose. I think that Baylor will win this in a very close game.
Nick, do you agree?
I 100% agree. I think Houston could easily come away with the win tomorrow against Baylor. This is a team led under Kelvin Sampson who had to basically struggle and claw its way into actually playing games during the regular season. This was a team that basically had every guy catch COVID at one point and had so much trouble trying to get a string of 3-4 games in a row consecutively within their actual schedule to start the season. So this is a team that's been able to deal with a lot of adversity in 2020 and including 2021 as well. They have the guys on the roster. They have leadership from Giroux and Grimes. Gorm has been a great add in their starting lineup so far as well. They've played some feisty teams, Rutgers, Syracuse with their shooting. They were able to come away with the victory there when Syracuse was on the precipice of making a late charge. They got the guys to make a very interesting game out of the Baylor game tomorrow. It really depends on, their defense down the stretch. If they can play defense like they did against Rutgers and Syracuse in the second half of those games, then Baylor's going to have to really bring on their offense because they did struggle a little bit in their game in the first couple of rounds. They had some opportunities where they could have went on 15, 20-point leads and held their opponents to within 10 for a majority of the second half. So it could be a very streaky team at times, Baylor, but as long as Teague and Butler are leading the team and having an offensive efficient game, then Baylor should win. But this one will definitely be a closer game than the one following that one.
So Nick, for your prediction, who do you have winning this Baylor-Houston matchup?
I think Baylor's going to squeak by. I think it's going to be within 5 points, though. And I wouldn't be surprised if it needs more than 40 minutes.
Wow. So both Rob and Nick agreeing that Baylor comes out on top, but probably by no more, or should say maybe within 10 points, at least within 10 points. So gentlemen, based on that, I was going to say who's in your national championship, but it appears to me that based on your predictions, we have 1 seed versus 1 seed, Gonzaga and Baylor. So Rob, I want to start with you. Who wins it all on Monday night and why?
Yeah, I mean, a little boring, but tried and true. One seed versus 1 seed, the 2 best teams in the country. A matchup we were robbed of because of COVID early in the regular season. It was so unfortunate. That was supposed to be the game of the year, essentially a championship preview early on in the season. We didn't get it. So what better way than to do it right here, right now on Monday? Again, with 2 of the best teams in the country, 2 very offensive proud teams. I do. I'm going to stick by my guns and say that the Baylor Bears are going to manage to find a way to win the national championship,
Wow.
cut down the nets. It's going to be a battle, though. And as Nick said with the Baylor-Houston game, I wouldn't be surprised if this championship game needs more than 40 minutes as well. It can get down and dirty. It's going to be a fight to the finish.
So, Nick, are we looking at another team that doesn't go undefeated?
I'm gonna quote my one of my favorite commentators in Lee Corso and say, "Not so fast, my friend."
I was hoping that would be used tonight.
Yeah, Gonzaga is just—they have too many weapons on offense. When they can rely on 6 guys, that's something that we haven't seen in college basketball in a really long time, probably since that Kentucky team from 6 years ago. It's going to be incredibly tough for UCLA to play a full 40 minutes with Gonzaga, and then to ask Baylor or Houston to do the same thing 2 nights separated from a semifinal matchup. It could be, little too much rest for Baylor and Houston to come into that championship game with potentially Gonzaga. I think as long as Timmy, Nephard, Kispert, and Suggs are on their game, they shoot over 40% from the field. Like I said before, this is a Gonzaga team that shoots the ball over 50% almost every game. They've only been able to not do that once this season, and that was against Kansas, another valuable opponent that could have went farther in this tournament. It's going to be very tough for any of those 3 teams to make a game out of Gonzaga. And this is Mark Few's year. We mentioned before, this is his best team in his tenure at Gonzaga. He's won 20 games or more in all of his seasons leading up to that first potential national contender with Adam Morrison. So, if this is the year to do it, they've made it to the championship game a couple of years back with Sabonis on the court. They have more tools now, and this is their year.
Nick, I want to go back to something you were saying before. Do you think that because Baylor and Houston are playing the first game, that offers them an advantage or a disadvantage maybe as compared to Gonzaga with more time off? Or no, you don't think with a couple of days off that plays a factor?
I think it helps. It's not going to really help too much. It might dictate the tempo of the second game, depending on how close that first game is. I've seen it in previous Final Fours. I think the first semifinal game does a lot in predicting how the second game is going to turn out. And we saw it with Gonzaga and North Carolina a couple of years ago. We saw it with Virginia when they won in 2019, that incredible game with Auburn. It's going to be a very similar situation. It just depends on if those teams can really play a full 40 minutes with Gonzaga. We haven't really seen that in the tournament so far. Gonzaga's been able to blow out all the teams that they faced coming into this game tomorrow. So it'll be something that we haven't seen if it's a close game within 10 points with 5 minutes left.
7:18 here on the Primetime Rundown. Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, Nick Diamandis here with you for the next couple of hours. We want to make sure we get to our 7:18 sports update, and our 7:18 sports update focuses upon our continuing theme here with college basketball and the big announcement that had come down that Roy Williams, after 40 plus years coaching in his career, nearly 40 years coaching on the college sidelines, has decided he's going to retire from the game of basketball. He's the fastest coach ever to 900 wins, spending 15 years at Kansas and 18 years at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, a 3-time national champion with the Tar Heels, a 3-time Big 12 Coach of the Year, a 2-time ACC Coach of the Year, as I continue to rattle off all of his accomplishments, and ultimately was elected to the National Basketball Hall of Fame in 2007. Roy was quoted as saying, "It has been a thrill. It has been unbelievable. I've loved it. It's coaching, and that's all I've ever wanted to do since the summer after my 9th grade year of high school. No one has ever enjoyed coaching like I have for 48 years, end quote. And then just to add and show the class that happens between the two Tobacco Road rivals, Duke men's basketball tweeting out just yesterday, salute to UNC head coach Roy Williams on a legendary 48-year career. All respect. Thank you for all you have done for the game, our league, and the greatest rivalry in sports. Again, just great class there from the Atlantic Coast Conference, and especially the two rivals, the two bitter rivals that are just separated miles apart between Duke and the University of North Carolina. Rob, let's start with you here. Your thoughts initially when you heard this news that Roy Williams was stepping down and going to retire from the game.
Yeah, I mean, what more can you say except legend, really? I mean, this guy is basically is college basketball. He's one of the first coaches you think of, easily in the top, I'd say top 3 coaches you think of when it comes to coaching. You think of Jim Boeheim, you think of Coach K, you think of Roy Williams. That's pretty much where it's at there. And honestly, what a great career. A lot of national championships, a lot of appearances. This was a very strange year for UNC, obviously. They were not quite the same powerhouse that they were, and they exited the tournament in round 1. Obviously not the way he wanted to go out, but at least he went out on his own terms. He went out his own way. And honestly, what better can you say except good luck, coach, and hopefully you have a great retirement.
Nick, this has been just such a challenging year, and we've continued to see such legendary broadcasters, legendary coaches just step away from the game because of the trials and tribulations that have come with this year. So for you as a college basketball fan, hearing this news about Roy Williams step away from the game, what was that like to you?
It's sad. It's definitely something that is going to get, really hard getting used to, not seeing him on the sideline with North Carolina. He's been there since 2003, which feels like an entire lifetime for me. He's a Dean Smith disciple, and if you look at both of their resumes and their times at UNC, you can almost say that they had equal resumes. It's unfortunate that for Roy Williams, at least, Dean Smith Court is Dean Smith Court. You may be in front of Dean Smith Court to commemorate Roy Williams in the future, but he means everything to that UNC program, and it's going to be interesting who they replace him with. There's plenty of incredible candidates on that list, and I'm sure we'll talk about that soon. But yeah, the UNC basketball, they did have a couple of years of struggle. The ACC conference in basketball has gotten a lot closer, and it's a lot better in terms of competition. A lot more teams like Florida State's, Syracuse being involved in the mix, making this not just a 2 or 3 team conference anymore. And it's been tough for all those teams in that conference to really, have a full schedule of ACC competition from January on to deal with. And I know that Coach Williams is definitely going to look back and be very proud of the work that he's done, and including his national championships. Those teams, you can obviously put them in the top 10, top 20s of all-time teams. It's going to be incredible to see how UNC goes on for the future without Williams.
Yeah, you don't forget about any of the championships that he won, even though that Roy Williams did not win a national championship in his time at Kansas. His last year at Kansas was the year that Syracuse won the national championship with Carmelo Anthony. And then he went on to win Roy Williams the following year to UNC and began that long tenure coaching such phenomenal athletes to national championships from the days of Rashad McCants to Theo Pinson and right on down the list, and all the All-Americans he's just had the pleasure of coaching. And we just wish here on the Primetime Down Roy Williams all the best and congratulations on just such an exceptional career. But going back into Nick's point, and I'm just going to point this question at Nick for the moment here. You had said that a long list of names, running down to replace Roy Williams at North Carolina. Who's at the top of that list for you to replace?
I think it's going to come down to 2 obvious names, 2 guys that have ties to UNC. One is actually an assistant coach. That's Hubie Smith. This guy has been his associate head coach for a long time.
Yep.
It's definitely going to come down to him. I think Wes Miller from UNC Greensboro is another great name to add to that conversation too. Another UNC product. He knows what it means to bleed Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So if UNC wants to go in that direction with someone who has lineage to the program, I think both of those 2 guys are obvious candidates. You can look across the country. I know that you can kind of poach different coaches from different conferences. I know Rick Pitino is the name that everybody wants to see move from Iona to see if he can get another chance at another reputable Power 5 conference team. I don't think UNC is going to make that call, but we saw Oklahoma and them hiring Porter Moser earlier today, another popular name. I'm sure he would have been considered in that candidate list as well. They can hire whoever they want. UNC is a top 5 national basketball program. It would be asinine for any coach coming into that candidate to basically say, no, I don't want to coach here. No one's going to say no to that opportunity if they're asked.
We've seen a lot of coaching changes over this last week, really, last 2 weeks. One Nick just mentioned, which really just came down the pipeline an hour ago, which was that Loyola Chicago's Porter Moser has agreed to take a 6-year deal to be the next head coach at the University of Oklahoma. Chris Beard, the head coach at Texas Tech, has now agreed to go to his rival school to become the head coach at the University of Texas, which now leaves me to talk to my two Big East gentlemen right here about the announcement of Shaka Smart to Marquette. And he is a Wisconsin native. He left the University of Texas, with 2 years left on his deal at a little bit over $3 million average annual value. As I mentioned, Chris Beard's going to take over as the head coach, formerly of Texas Tech. And he was citing, this was Shaka Smart, as saying that he was happy not just to go home, but he was happy that he was going to a school where basketball was going to be the main sport, vis-a-vis the fact that Texas has football and Marquette does not. Shaka leaves the University of Texas with a 109-86 record in 6 seasons. But going back to Shaka's point about saying that he's going to a school that's basketball only, I think Kevin Durant would have a slight disagreement for him about saying that Texas may only be a football school. So, look, this is a guy who seems to win wherever he goes. Shaka, from VCU to Texas, now to Marquette. Is this a thumbs up or a thumbs down for Shaka at Marquette?
It's definitely a thumbs up for Shaka. I don't know how much about Marquette though. It's interesting. His kid's name escaped me, but the day that he gets announced, a kid enters one of their best players enters the transfer portal. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it was literally same day within 3 hours. It was insane. I was like, well, that's not a good start to the Shaka era. It's almost like he wins, but it's sometimes that's not what it's all about, especially for players. They want to have a good coach. They want to mesh with their coach. And Shaka's a good coach. Look, all you have to really do when you're to be a good coach is win, and he certainly does a lot of it. Obviously, not even remotely the kind of tournament he wanted to have with Texas this year, getting upset in the first round by Albany and Christian. But nonetheless, I mean, when you think of Shaka Smart, for me personally, I think you remember his miraculous run with VCU in the tournament.
Sure.
About, what was it, 8 years ago now? My God, we are getting old. So that's what I think of when I think of Shaka Smart. I think of that miraculous VCU team, incredible run. It's gonna make the Big East interesting because there are so many players in the transfer portal right now, and there are probably a lot of players who love Shaka Smart. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see some of those transfer kids try to get into Marquette. And there's going to be a lot of shuffling this season now, that especially with everyone getting the extra year of eligibility. As heard earlier, St. John's Rasheem Dunn is actually not going to graduate, and he entered the transfer portal. That was a shock to a lot. It was a shock to me. I thought he was done with basketball, but apparently he wants one more year, but it's not going to be with the Red Storm. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. It's gonna be an interesting offseason, but I think overall I give Marquette a thumbs up for taking a coach that certainly knows how to win some games.
Nick, Marquette has been no doormat, especially since their start in the Big East Conference. Over the last 7 years, they've been coached by a Coach K disciple and Steve Wojciechowski. But this is a team it was such a down year for the Big East, at least from the perspective of the Midwest. I mean, aside from Creighton, Marquette had a down year. Butler had a down year. Both teams didn't make the tournament. Xavier was up and down, but they were really stricken with COVID. But I want to stick with Marquette here for a second. Do you feel, aside from the names that are in the transfer portal right now, we've seen Samir Torrance go to Syracuse, names like Kobe McEwen and Jamal Cain are still currently in the portal. Do you feel that Shaka's arrival really ascends Marquette maybe over the Villanovas, over the Creightons, just because of Shaka's resume?
Maybe not this year, but I believe Shaka Smart is the right guy for that program. I honestly think this move is a win-win for both programs. Texas gets a guy in Chris Beard who arguably was the most popular coach looking to make a move elsewhere after this year, and is someone who knows the Big 12 very well. And for Shaka Smart, he's going to a place that he knows well in Milwaukee. He should know how to recruit well in that area. You know, the Big East definitely needs a little bit more publicity, and they're definitely undervalued in regards to, where the other Power 5 conferences rank. No disrespect to them, but they deserve some credit too. You have 2 of the last 5 national champions in Villanova. You have incredible talent at Creighton and all these other schools within the conference. So I think Shaka Smart knows how competitive it's going to be coming in, and I trust him to recruit well in that area. Like I said, he knows what kind of style the Marquette fans like to see. It's going to be a lot different from what Steve Wojciechowski had prior to this hire. So we're going to see a lot of different things come in within the transfer portal. It's been an incredible last 2 weeks seeing guys announce that their decisions are going to be going to schools elsewhere. St. John's is a victim of it. We have the most transfer portal players right now at 7. So, and I trust Mike Anderson to make the adjustments. He's already had 2 quality commits so far, and Aaron Wheeler and Smith. I'm sorry, I forget his first name, from Vermont. So, I might be in the minority in saying this, but I love what the transfer portal is doing for college basketball. I love the free agency kind of feel. It gives more buzz outside the tournament, and that buzz is going to translate till April, well into the summer. It just gives college basketball a little more light in having a free agency like this. Maybe it's just because of that extra year granted for COVID, but I think it's incredible. You're always constantly seeing new guys commit to another school. So we'll see where a lot of guys go. There's a ton of great names still left on the portal, and I'm sure Shaka Smart's going to get a couple of them to come in. So the Big East and all these other Power 5 conferences, they should benefit from this.
Nick, do you feel, and I want to stick with you here for a second, do you feel that just obviously right now DePaul is still currently looking for a head coach as well? Do you feel that because of the proximity, for those that don't know the Midwest all too well, that Milwaukee and Chicago are just separated by a couple hours of a drive? So do you feel that based on who they might hire at DePaul has just always been known for being the bottom, the cellar dwelling program of the Big East in men's basketball. Do you think maybe we now see a change with DePaul to where there becomes a little bit of a recruiting rivalry between those two schools?
It has the potential to be. They really need that marquee name to, take over the program and to try and recruit really well in the Chicago area. Chicago is home to so many good blue chip prospects that they decide to go elsewhere. And obviously not having a marquee school like at DePaul, or hopefully Loyola Chicago becomes more of a marquee mid-major in college basketball. So I think Chicago is aching for a program to really take over the city and, to bring some college basketball relevance back to the city. It's going to be interesting to see who they hire. In the past, they've had the opportunities to make, that move to getting another premier coach, but they haven't really been able to do that. No disrespect to Dave Littau. He had the opportunities to do that, and he had some good guys play for him, but not the level of Big East play. And we've yet to see someone who really is being targeted to go to DePaul right now. So, more to come in that situation. It's unfortunate that Chicago doesn't have that marquee school yet in college basketball, but maybe that can change with the Big East and all the things that are going on right now.
Nick alluded to it earlier, ladies and gentlemen, about the number of names in the transfer portal for St. John's, and this is where I want to cap off our college basketball talk. Nick being a St. John's grad, both of them, Rob and Nick being St. John's men's basketball fans. And the Johnnies finished right on the edge of that tourney in 2020, 2021. Posh Alexander being the Big East Rookie of the Year, the Defensive Player of the Year. Mike Anderson in only his second year at the helm of the program, the Big East Coach of the Year. They clinched a top 5 seed in the Big East tournament. But now we're seeing all these names head for the transfer portal, like Marcellus Earlington and Greg Williams, Isaiah Moore, Josh Roberts, Vince Cole. Rob alluded to Rasheem Dunn already. They're being cited as saying part of the reason that they went into the transfer portal was because credit was being given more to the New York City homegrown players than others, meaning Rasheem Dunn, Dylan Asaiwusu, and Dylan Adaiwusu, excuse me, I couldn't get the name right, Posh Alexander, and Julian Champagny. So, Rob, when you heard this news, being a St. John's fan yourself, are we buying this right now? Like, do you believe what these 6 or 7 guys are saying about the program is the reason that they're leaving?
It's tough to say, really. I mean, I don't think they're wrong. Because look, St. John's has always been mostly local recruiting. It's all about getting those local guys because you get a lot of good players out in that local area, and you want them, especially when you're already in Queens. You want those guys from the Bronx, from Manhattan. You want the New York City kids at your school. You want the New Jersey kids at your school. It's mainly what it's been about. What shocked me was what Earlington said. Earlington got a lot of big minutes for St. John's, and he felt he wasn't playing enough, which was part of his reason to transfer. And I was shocked by that. I was like, you were essentially the sixth man on this St. John's team. And I mean, look, he'll wherever he ends up going, unless he goes to like a power school, he's gonna start wherever he goes next, which it's just unfortunate. I mean, look, when you had a set five as Mike Anderson did, you have to roll with it. But that also leaves the question, why did the St. John's lose Josh Roberts? Or why did they lose Greg Williams? Because those guys would start on occasion. So Earlington would have just slipped in there because those guys were gone. He would have slipped into that starting five. They would have rearranged it. So it's tough to be optimistic right now about St. John's, but because, as Nick alluded to earlier, about the transfer portal being big, they're not down and out yet. It's gonna come down. It's gonna come down to picking up a couple more key transfers. Use those scholarships to your advantage. So what St. John's fans need to do right now is hang tight, hold, don't sell, don't pretty much just hold the stock that you've got right now.
Nick, it seems like the spark of this really started last year when LJ Figueroa had bolted for Oregon, and now we're seeing all these names entering the transfer portal. I'm going to ask you the same question I'm asking Rob. When you heard this news in regards to these 6-7 unhappy players, was this something that surprised you, or is this something maybe that you expected?
Surprised me maybe a little bit. Having the opportunity to work within St. John's athletic department, the fan base absolutely attracts to the New York City guys. And it's always been like that. You look at the long list of guys that have played at St. John's, their top 10 in program history, they're all New York guys. Whether it's Mullen or more recently with Ron Artest and Malik Sealy, these are all guys that are within the area. So it's unfortunate for those guys to feel that way and to feel like they're being, misrepresented or overshadowed by the Shenpennies, the Alexanders, the Adaiwusus. But they're going to get valuable playing time elsewhere. And especially with Williams and Earlington, those are guys that are going to be very missed with St. John's next year. And those are guys that Mike Anderson figured out a way to mold within his playing style. And they prospered. Greg Williams became a really good three-point shooter. Marcellus Earlington proved to be a very good stretch four who could also shoot from behind the arc and was a guy who was very reliable in staying on the block and getting some offensive and defensive rebounds for that team, something that they really, really struggled last year. And the struggles will continue, at least till now. They're going to need a quality big man that can be a threat on offense and not just defense. Aaron Wheeler could be that guy, but he's still undersized at 6'9". He's not going to be a 5. He'll be a stretch 4 for now. You really have to see what Mike Anderson's going to do in this transfer portal. That's a huge need that they're going to have to prioritize in the next coming days and weeks. But for right now, I think St. John's is still in a good place. You still have the possibility of Shenpenny coming back. He's going to test the draft waters. He didn't sign an agent, so I really think he's going to need another year in the College Bowl ranks to really elevate that name. It was a shame that he didn't get Player of the Year accolades within the conference. He rightfully was in that conversation with the Mamus and the Robinson Earls. He definitely was a top 3 player in that conference, in my opinion. So he could be that main guy at St. John's and potentially win the award next year if he comes back. So as long as you have those glue guys, St. John's could be a very reputable program in the Big East. Hopefully they make that climb and make it in the tournament in 2021.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second, Nick, and I hate to do this to the St. John's fans that are watching or listening, but let's say Julian Shenpenny does, in fact, bolt for the NBA. So after being so close to that NCAA tournament bid this year, what does that mean, especially, and you brought it up already, but I want to elaborate on it. What does it mean for Mike Anderson and his potential future in his third year coaching for the Red Storm?
Well, it's going to get a lot tougher for Anderson and his coaching staff. If they don't have Shenpenny coming back, they're going to have to rely on Alexander and Adaiwusu on both sides of the floor for now. They definitely lost some key glue guys in their B roster, guys that came off the bench and gave some really good minutes. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. St. John's fans are hoping and praying that he decides to come back. And it's a move that plenty of St. John's guys have made in the past. Mustafa Heron, LJ, They all did that. They all basically said, we're going to see what we can hear from these NBA scouts and see if we have the game to make that transition. What they heard wasn't what they wanted to hear, at least until that point, and they came back for another year, in LJ's case too. And right now, anything could happen. All these teams are suffering, losses with the transfer portal. Obviously, St. John's a little bit more than others, but every team is going to look very different next year. And it's going to be something that is going to be very, very fun to watch in the fall of next year. So my message to St. John's fans, just stay positive, stay optimistic, and then hopefully, they get some more guys to add to that roster.
DeLuca, your closing thoughts on Mike Anderson heading into year 3 coaching at St. John's?
Yeah, I personally believe Champagne will be back, so I think that'll really help cement the core. I think he's essentially going the route Shamori Pons did. He tests his name now, and then he's going to bolt next year for the NBA if he has just as good of a year as he did this year. So, because if he has as good of a year as he did this year, he's going to win Big East Player of the Year. There's no question in my mind. But I think for Anderson, it's just important to keep recruiting these local kids, try to woo some transfers. But overall, as long as Champagne is back, because Posh Alexander, very good. There's a reason he's Big East Rookie of the Year, but the pressure wasn't necessarily there because of guys like Champagne. So if he has to do it alone, it's going to be a lot tougher. But I think for right now, Mike Anderson is definitely safe. He's gonna really do something special with this team in year 3. I mean, look, he got a 4 seed with a team that was maybe supposed to be middle pack, and they get top 4. That's incredible. So I think give it a little time.
Preseason ranked 9.
Exactly. Hold your stock is pretty much is something I'll say again. Just hold your stock, St. John's fans. We're not dead yet.
I actually wanted to, just talking about recruiting classes, I really wanted to jump in with the two of you. This wasn't on the prompt tonight, but I'm kind of catching you got boys off the cuff, but I really want to get your Big East knowledge on this. And we see a name like James Bouknight declaring for the NBA draft. I think we all figured he was going to, but considering the early exit for Uconn this year in the NCAA tournament, the fact that now 2 years, and I don't think we've seen the success that we've expected to right away in the tenure of Danny Hurley as the head coach at Uconn. Both of you guys, whoever wants to chime in first, are we a little concerned, even though they're supposed to have a top 3 recruiting class coming in next year, are we a little concerned about the future of Uconn?
No, I don't believe so. This team is going to be fine. Look, that's March. The fact that they left in the first round, that's quite literally just this is March, all caps. That is literally the tournament. Anything is possible. Oral Roberts proved that. The fact that Maryland upset them, it happens. And Maryland was not given enough credit, first of all, myself included. I did not think they were going to be that good. I did not think they were going to run like that. But crazy things happen in March. But there is nothing to, even with Bouknight leaving, there is nothing to worry about with Uconn.
Nick.
And I would even say a 7 versus 10 isn't really, an upset in regards to Uconn at 7. Those two teams were, coming in a coin flip. For most people's brackets, essentially 2 very equal teams that, if they play a 10-game series, they equally could have won 5 games. And Bouknight, when he goes to the NBA, when his name is called in the draft, he's going to be a first-round draft pick. He's got the quality, he's got the potential to be, a pretty reliable guard in the NBA. And Coach Hurley is just going to keep recruiting guys like that. He's going to make sure that he knows that Northeast, that New England recruiting wire pretty well. And he's done well so far. And the names, as you said, top 3 recruiting class coming in, the future is bright in Storrs, Connecticut. And right now, with the Big East going to have a different landscape going into 2021, could easily be a top 3 program coming in.
I guess my follow-up to that would be is just somebody like Danny Hurley, who exudes such confidence about himself, even, in a press conference saying, you better come and get us soon because we're getting hot and we're getting hot at the right time. And he just exudes such confidence that even, I guess, going back to his days at URI, and he succeeded and really just dominated the Atlantic 10. Maybe it's a little bit naive on my part to feel that when they decided to move from the American back into the Big East, that I thought he would just dominate. Was I wrong in feeling that way?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, Ian, we discussed this on an episode like I don't know, 30 something. We've been doing too many episodes, but nonetheless, no, you were not wrong in saying that, because all three of us expected UConn to be near the top of the Big East, and for a couple years to come, we expect them to be there, and I see no reason why they still won't be, because this team, aside from Buck Knight leaving, there's really not a lot of changes happening at UConn. The core is roughly the same. So yes, you're losing your best player, but that happens. You still have the important thing is having the solid depth to back it up for when these type of events occur. And UConn definitely has that.
Gentlemen, let's shift gears now to Major League Baseball. And opening day has come and gone for one of the local teams. The other team, it's going to have to wait till Monday, as the Mets and Nationals entire series from Washington, D.C. has been postponed due to COVID protocol within the Washington Nationals organization. So opening night will now be Monday night in Philadelphia for the New York Mets, and we'll get into the Lindor contract in a second. But first, I want to touch on the team that already had opening day, which would be the New York Yankees, who fell to the Toronto Blue Jays yesterday by the final score of 3-2 in 10 innings. Randall Grichuk supplying the go-ahead RBI double that came in the 10th inning. Rob, I want to start with you here first. Garrett Cole, 5 1/3 innings pitched, 2 runs, 8 Ks over 97 pitches. Something we've become so accustomed to seeing of him, not even just in a Yankee uniform, but also in an Astros uniform. But Gary Sanchez, I mean, on opening day, a guy who was batting well below 200 for much of the year last year, hitting a go-ahead 2-run homer at the time in his first at-bat. He bats 2 for 3, a run scored on the day, eventually got pinch run for by Mike Tauchman when they were trying to score the go-ahead run. But not to get ahead of ourselves here, Rob, but it's only one game and we still got 161 left. But I'm sure you have to like the outlook of what you saw day one from Gary Sanchez this season.
From what I saw from Gary Sanchez was a different Gary Sanchez from last year. What I saw was shades of his rookie season. That is from 2018 even. That's the Gary Sanchez I saw on that field yesterday. It was an incredible performance. He hitting the ball well, seeing the ball well. Seems a little leaner to me too. I feel like he's actually dropped a few pounds just based on what I could see. I think that's helping his fitness. It's helped his game. Because also behind the plate, he gunned someone. He got a huge out, catching someone stealing at second. Perfect throw to nail him down. Final out of the inning. That's the Gary Sanchez that Yankee fans know, not the one that we've seen from 2019 and the shortened 2020 season. That Gary Sanchez yesterday is what Yankee fans have been waiting to see 2 years for, and it's good to see. We're hoping it's a sign of things to come. Obviously, got to wait and see. I'm not too thrilled about the offensive performance from everybody else. When you have a power lineup like this, only getting 2 runs, not good, not a lot of hits, especially your top 4 going 1 for 18, unacceptable. 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position, even worse. It's just, but Garrett Cole had himself a fine game, nothing new. It just comes down to the bat. It's like, here's something. For the past 2 years, people are like, oh, well, the Yankees never addressed their pitching. How about never getting a hit in the clutch? All right. Because that's been a Yankees problem for a while. And that showed yesterday. They had multiple opportunities to win that game in 9 innings. Aside from the horrible second base rule in extra innings, which cost the Yankees the game. That's not the excuse here. The problem is offense is not hitting in the clutch. It's as simple as that. They had the bases loaded with only 1 out. And what do we see? We see a double play. It's frustrating. It's only 1 game in, though, so iron out the kinks. Another game tomorrow afternoon against the same Blue Jays. You know who you're looking at. You got Corey Kluber on the mound, and I imagine Gary Sanchez is going to catch again. So we'll just have to wait and see.
The double play that you're talking about occurred in the 7th inning with the game tied at that point 2-2 and bases loaded, 1 out, and Judge ahead 3-1 in the count and grounds into a 5-4-3 inning double play. But Rob, you made a great point in terms of the big boppers in the lineup. The 1-4 hitters yesterday for the Yankees, that's DJ LeMahieu, Aaron Judge, Aaron Hicks, and Giancarlo Stanton, a combined 1 for 18. So Nick, I leave this on your shoulders here a little bit. It's 1 game, but after the postseason Stanton had especially, I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I'm sure just seeing what you saw on opening day had to have been a little bit of a cause for concern at 1 for 18.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a team that, on paper should be scoring at least 4 or 5 runs a game. Garrett Cole did a great job proving on his end that he can really, carry this team as long as he's got the ball in the bump. But we need to see more from guys like Stanton. Judge had the opportunities to really break open the game, and unfortunately, he hit it right at the third baseman in Biggio. Made a good double play turn. This is a team that's going to have to, like Rob said, find the opportunities to bring in some runs and hit at clutch moments. You can't rely on the guys like DJ and DJ Glaber, all these guys that proved that they could do it in the playoffs last year to start season off in a little bit of a funk. I think Giancarlo Stanton, it's a huge year for him because potentially this could be his last year as a Yankee, depending on what the Yankees do with trading him, if there is a suitor for him in the offseason. This is a guy who's had plenty of potential to be a multi-MVP candidate. He did it in Miami once, but this is a guy could easily hit 50 home runs in a year, and to do it in Yankee Stadium. Not expecting him to do it, every night, but this is a guy that's got to get on base for the Yankees. And as the number 4 hitter, got to do it at least once a game, whether it's a walk, single, double, home run. You can't be going in there looking clueless on off-speed pitches like he sometimes does. And it's unfortunate to see that with all the money that he's getting paid from the Yankees. So they do have a lot of question marks to address. They're not urgent, but it could be urgent if they go a whole April trying to figure out their glue guys and how, they can figure out a lineup that suits all those guys. They have a ton of tools with the hitting. And I think the absence of Luke Voit could be a cause for concern too. Are we going to rely on Jay Bruce to play 2 months, 3 months without Luke Voit filling in some of those games? That was a guy that he had one shot that almost, went over the fence. He hit it to the warning track, but the other bats looked pretty clueless at the plate. So it's going to be a lot of different things to evaluate with the Yankees, and that first base position could be a huge highlight to point out.
And another piece of it too is the fact that right now, when you look at the Yankees 7 through 9 hitters, Urshela didn't have a good day yesterday. Jay Bruce didn't have a good day yesterday. But you know what? It's one game, and you don't want to put all that stake into it. But Luke Voit, as we know, had a very big year for the Yankees last year. He led the team in home runs, and he was just a driving force for that offense, and them scoring all the runs that they did, and especially playing 81 games in a hitter's ballpark like they do. But going back into the 10th inning as a whole, obviously the Blue Jays got to start with the inning with a runner on second, and then we saw the Yankees got to start the bottom of the 10th down a run with a runner on second with a chance to tie the game, and we saw not the Yankees big bopper strike out once, not twice, but in fact 3 times. And I feel like another piece that we have not mentioned about the Yankees yesterday is the fact that they really have some injuries in the back end of that bullpen leading into Aroldis Chapman. Now, I know we didn't see Chapman pitch yesterday, Rob, but the losses of guys like Zach Britton, who've become just so crucial to that Yankee bullpen, Justin Wilson, who they acquired, the former Met left-handed reliever, is also on the injured list. So guys like Nick Nelson, are pitching the 10th inning. So until these guys come back, has the back end of the bullpen also, Rob, become a little bit of a concern?
Yeah, a little bit. Just because when it comes down to injuries, look, this is one of the best bullpens in baseball when it's healthy. It's not even a question at this point. But when they're injured, the best guys are injured. You need some of these younger depth guys to step up. Just one bad pitch by Nelson yesterday ended up costing the game, but it happens. He's young. He'll learn from it, move on. Not too much concern yet because on a normal day, you're not going to get 2 runs from this Yankee offense. You're going to get, as Nick said, 4 to 5 runs. So typically you're not going to be in situations like this. Chapman will hopefully be back soon. And it's got to be, you got to see more of what we got from the starting rotation, like we did from Cole yesterday. Got to see got to see the same thing from Kluber tomorrow. Hopefully he can go 6. You don't want the pitch count to drive up too high too early. That was an issue with Cole. The pitch count was just a little too high. That's the only reason he came out. So, and they got to use him. They got to use him on day 5. He's only pitching on 3 days rest for now until Jameson Taillon is ready to enter the rotation full time. So I think but to answer your question, it's slightly concerning, but it's a young core in that rotation. So it'll be It'll be all right in the end.
Just about close to the top of the hour here on the Primetime Rundown. And as we said, the Mets did not have a chance to have opening day yet. That their series in Washington was postponed. Their entire 3-game series set to be played in Washington was postponed as a result of several COVID-19 positives within the Nationals organization. So the Mets will now prepare to go play a 3-game series in Philadelphia starting Monday before they come home to face the Marlins for their home opener next Thursday. But the piece about the Mets that obviously is the most important is that less than 24 hours before they were scheduled to have their opening game in Washington yesterday, on Wednesday night at about the 11th hour and 59th minute, Francisco Lindor agreed to a 10-year extension worth $341 million with the New York Mets. The Mets had said that they were going to stand pat at 10 years and 325. Lindor's camp said we wanted 12 years, 385. So ultimately, the announcement came down. I was actually sleeping, if you could believe it or not. My wife actually asked me the next morning, said, "What time did you go to bed?" And I said, "I don't know, about 9:30. And she's like, "So I guess you didn't hear the news." I'm like, "No, I heard the news that Lindor is going to be a Met for a decade." So 10 years, $341 million. So Nick, I want to start with you here. What was your instant reaction to the deal that the Mets have now locked up their franchise shortstop for a decade? And did you think Lindor would have left that kind of money on the table?
No, he was definitely going to re-sign with the Mets. It was just a matter of time of where the compromise was going to come from. Obviously, Lindor's camp compromised a little bit. You know, the Mets were very, very strict on that 325. You know, there was a big window between the two camps. But I think Met fans are obviously going to be happy with Lindor staying here for the long run. Now, is he going to be here for 10 years? Most likely not. So it's imperative that Steve Cohen and the guys in the front office, they do their best to continue to put out a lineup and a pitching staff that gives their team the best chance to make the playoffs on a yearly basis. Right now, it's looking pretty good. You know, we've yet to see them play a regular season game so far, but what you see on paper is a team that should make the playoffs, most likely should win the NL East if everything goes well throughout the year, if they can stay healthy, if the guys like DeGrom, Syndergaard, Stroman, they can be the quality pitchers that they're depending them to be. So, again, a lot of the chips have to fall in line for the Mets. But right now, the fact that Lindor is happy and wants to be here long-term, that should be a motivation boost for all those guys in that clubhouse. And it should lead to some success early on.
Rob, it seemed like for such a while, not such a while, but it seemed like in the days, because he said that he would not talk contract extensions once opening day came, that it was literally up until opening day for them to make that determination and come to an agreement on an extension. So ultimately the Mets came to a 10-year, $341 million agreement with Francisco Lindor. But a lot of fans, you would assume, weren't going to be very endearing to Lindor had he on opening day, or I should say in their home opener next week against Miami, if he didn't sign, because it was like, we didn't put enough on the table for you. And especially considering the number of free agent shortstops that they're going to be out there at the end of this season: Carlos Correa, Trevor Story, Javi Baez, just naming a few, and if you add Lindor to that class, I mean, there really just wasn't many of a way that Lindor was going to, with those guys on the free agent block, were going to be able to, he was going to be nowhere able to bring in that kind of money like he was being offered by the Mets initially.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was not really all that concerned. I mean, look, when Lindor said, "I'm not moving from the number I want," and Cohen tweeted it out or something that
he's a heck of a player. Yep.
So that he's not going to budge. So I thought, oh, all right, maybe he is going to walk after all. But I had a feeling Lindor wasn't going to walk, because I think he even knows nobody, and I literally mean no other team in Major League Baseball, was going to give him what the Mets offered him. Nobody. Not one single team. Not the Dodgers, not the Yankees, even though they had got the money to do it, because they've got all money to Kingdom Come now, as the Mets do too. But they were never going to offer him that. No team was going to be able to do that. Only Steve Cohen was able to do it. So I still kind of had a feeling that I thought maybe it would come mid-season. He'd come to his senses and he'd sign it then. But they get it done at 341. He's a great player. he's going to have to go out there and show it now because, you can't get an A-Rod sized contract, which is basically what this is, and not perform in New York. So I think it'll be it's a good deal for both sides. Lindor doesn't get the term he wants, but he gets a little more money, and Steve Cohen keeps the term his way, but he had to cough up a little more than he wanted to. But for Steve Cohen, which is weird to say that $15 million is essentially just pocket change to him, but that's essentially what it was. But the Mets get their guy. That's what was so important. It's something that it seemed like just never happened under the Wilpons. So this is good for the Mets. This is the start of the turn. I agree with Nick. They're in the NL East race 100%. They're going to, at bare minimum, be a wild card team. They're going to make the playoffs. I have them winning roughly around 90 games. I think that's probably their number, maybe 92, 93, splitting hairs. But nonetheless, good signing, great player. It's a good time to be a Mets fan right now, and this 2-horse race in the NL East is going to be a good one.
It's funny, Rob, that you had mentioned the Wilpons, and I know when the news broke that Steve Cohen was going to own the Mets, I remember being on the show here with you and Joey, and you mentioning the fact that it's actually going to scare the Yankees because the Mets now are actually going to spend the money to contend to play like a winning team, to play like a championship team, and get the players that they need to win a championship. Because as a Mets fan myself, it always seemed like the Mets always finished. They always shopped, as Scott Boras always said, they always shopped at Fred's, right? They always shopped off the clearance racks, and that the Mets have always finished second or third, maybe even below that for the top free agents. You think of the Jason Bay contract because they didn't want to pay Matt Holliday that year more money. When you think of the great contracts, I mean, maybe they were pre-Madoff under the Wilpon era. You think of, the Pedro Martinez signing, you think of the Carlos Beltran signing, but when you look back at the last decade and a half of Mets baseball, that they've always finished a bottom tier for these free agents, or at least just below the team that was going to pay these guys more money. So what does this first big contract at 34 point, actually, if you even include this year's average annual value, it's even above over 35 million average annual value. What does this first big contract say for this team with Cohen at the top?
It says we're open for business. Come play. Because he's willing to dish out money. He's willing to pay their players what they deserve, or what he feels they deserve, or a little more, because it seems like players these days have total say over how much money they want to make, which to me is crazy. But nonetheless, that's just the way sports are these days. But yeah, the Mets are a legitimate threat. They are a legitimate team. The new era is here. It's not even a question. Like you said, I said it probably 10, 12 episodes ago that the Mets are going to be scary with Steve Cohen in charge. I'm 100% right, because this is a scary time. It seemed like it was going to be, oh no, Mets all over again because Lindor didn't sign. But in the 11th hour, literally last second, he does. So it's clear that even when it looks like Steve Cohen might be down, he's never, ever out.
Nick, your thoughts? Nick, we can't hear you. Are you muted at the moment? I'm sorry.
My fault. What I was trying to say was, you don't become the new owner of the New York Mets without giving the fans of the team what they want. And in year one, you want to give them a team that's a very, very talented team that could potentially win their division and make some noise in the playoffs. And right now on paper, it looks really good. Lindor signing long-term should be a very positive sign for the guys like DeGrom, Alonso, all the guys that you would figure to be, face of the franchises for the foreseeable future. So Cohen hasn't really done anything wrong, in my opinion, since he's taken over the helm. He's doing everything that seems to be on the checklist so far in year one. Now it's just on the guys to perform day in, day out, and then give themselves the best chance to win on a nightly basis. Right now, probably in the toughest division. So these first 2 months of the year are going to be very, very crucial for the Mets. And it's going to be the same way for teams like the Nationals, the Braves, the Marlins, the Phillies. I don't think there's one bad team out of those five.
I agree.
We saw the Marlins make the playoffs last year in a shortened season. I understand it was only a 60-game season, but very talented guys in their roster that really are looking to break out and be, reputable players, maybe on different teams. in the future. So 5 very talented teams in that division. Could be a dogfight every night between those 5 teams when they play each other. So, the Mets just got to stay focused, do what they do, hit the ball and pitch really well. They should win majority of their games. And right now, best pitching rotation in the league by far, in my opinion. So a lot to look forward to if you're a Met fan.
Yeah, maybe when healthy though, Nick. Maybe when healthy. I mean, right now it's DeGrom at the top with with Stroman and then Taijuan Walker and guys like David Peterson and Joey Lucchesi rounding it out. But there is a lot of excitement surrounding the Mets in the rotation when they're healthy. When they get guys like Syndergaard and Carlos Carrasco back, that's going to be a crucial piece of it. For those of you that tuned into the I-95 Sports Network only a couple of days ago, we announced our MLB opening day special where we previewed the American League and National League East divisions and spoke, did a little buy or sell of our contenders. But we really didn't get a chance to get into our World Series predictions. And I want to throw my 2 guys here in the hot seat a little bit. And I invite all of our viewers and all of our fans that are watching to please drop your predictions in the comment box because we really want to hear from you as well. But I'm going to start with Rob here. And I know we're only a day and a half in at this point because we do have games underway right now in Major League Baseball. But Rob, what right now? I mean, if let's put the hammer down. What are your predictions for the World Series in 2021?
Yeah, look, we're 1 day in, and some teams look good, some teams look not so good, but you can't judge that off of one game. You got to give it a month and a half before you can really tell.
Only a month or a month and a half?
Yeah, because you play like 30, 40 games by then. So you pretty much know where teams are roughly where they're going to be by then. So I would say, in the way too early predictions, time's a ticking in the Bronx, and people are going to start getting impatient. So I think finally the Yankees have the roster to get over the hump, make the World Series, and I'm almost certain that they're going to meet the Dodgers there, and it's going to be a very tight series. It's 2 powerhouse teams, powerhouse offenses, great pitching. It would be a historical World Series to see, and honestly, it's probably going to take 7 games. But I have the Yankees over the Dodgers in 7.
Nick,
I would have to agree. Those 2 teams are the safest picks to make the World Series. They're the 2 teams that really didn't seem to digress. Every team that, at least in the American League, when you look at the teams that made the playoffs, you look at Houston losing Springer, you look at Oakland losing guys like Semien. Some of these teams lost some key pieces. Now, Chicago, interesting team that made the playoffs but didn't get past that first round. They could be a team that makes some noise in the playoffs if they have the year that they think they're going to have. They have a very potent lineup. They do have Eloy Jimenez missing probably half the year at least with his torn pectoral muscles. So, guys like Tim Anderson, Yohan Moncada, they're going to have better years than they did last year, and they had really good years for the White Sox. It's going to be interesting with Tony La Russa to see what kind of mentality that he brings to that clubhouse. It was an interesting choice to say the least coming in, but guy who knows how to win baseball games, and he's done it with plenty of superstar talent in Major League Baseball. So I think that could be a team that could give a team like the Yankees, the Astros, potentially Tampa, and also Toronto. I think Toronto is a team to fight for a wild card position as well. So I think the AL is going to be not wide open, but very competitive in the playoffs. In the National League, I really do believe it's the Dodgers and the Mets who are going to be fighting off in the NLCS. I think both teams have the 2 best pitching rotations when healthy. You look at, the Dodgers and what they did last year, didn't really lose valuable pieces, and they brought back Justin Turner, who's a glue guy for that roster, probably one of their most popular players in the clubhouse. So they've kept their identity heading into this year, and it's their year to win it again. To be honest with you, they should be the clear-cut favorite, and obviously, if you look at the Vegas odds right now, they are the number 1 team to win it all again this year. And if things go well, they stay healthy, Corey Seager hits the ball like he did in the playoffs, and Cody Bellinger somewhat makes a comeback and, is more consistent on offense, team's very dangerous. I think it's the Mets and the Dodgers who are going to fight. And then you might have a team like the Cubs who a little bit different look this year, but NL Central is going to be very, very tight. It's going to be a 3-team race between the Cardinals, the Cubs, and the Brewers. The Brewers just need the pitching to really be consistent. They don't really have the keys in the starting rotation, but again, I don't think it's going to be as competitive as the American League in the playoffs, but you have to win a series. Anybody can win 3 games in a 5-game series or 4 in a 7-game series. So it's going to be exciting to watch. And I'm glad that it's back.
Same here, and I know Rob feels the same way. But I have to ask, I think you left a pretty key team out of there, Nick. What's your take then on the San Diego Padres?
So here's the thing. I love the Padres lineup. And in a 162-game season, it's going to be interesting to see how many wins they can rack off. I do think playing the Dodgers as many times as they do is going to be something that's going to hamper them a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of a struggle, but they'll have that advantage going into the playoffs, playing teams that will give them some tough times. Colorado is no slouch, even though they don't have Arenado anymore. They still have Trevor Story and Dahl. They still have some key hitting pieces. And they play in Coors Field, which is a hitter's,
a launch pad. Yep.
So I think the Padres easily are going to be the number 1 wild card team. I don't know if they're going to win the division in the NL West. But again, it comes down to their starting pitching. Their starting pitching is going to need to be very solid against these. Yeah. Chris Paddock is going to have a great year. Dinelson Lamet is going to have an equal year to what he had last year. They lost Lucchesi, which could be a valuable piece in a playoff series. So I'm not too sold on the Padres yet right now, but if their stars coming into the season, if Tatis, Machado, Hosmer, if they have solid years, along with some middle-of-the-road guys in their lineup, Cronenworth and Grisham, if they have really good, solid hitting years and they play great defense, then they shouldn't be excluded from an opportunity to make the World Series.
Yeah, I think a lot's also going to depend a little bit too on the performances of their 2 offseason acquisitions, being Blake Snell and Yu Darvish as well. A big piece of theirs when they get him back next year will be the fact how much deeper that rotation is going to get. Once they get Mike Clevenger back, who's coming. We'll see if he can recover fully off Tommy John surgery. But I think those were some really good predictions, fellas, and I'm leaning the same way. I think Yankees Dodgers is the safest way to play it, but I also think right now it's the right way to play it. I think I'm not expecting the Yankees to struggle to hit over the course of 162 games. Yes, I do have some questions in regards to their starting rotation. After Cole, and you hope Kluber can maybe refine his pre-injury form at this point, but after that, there's still a lot of question marks for me. What can you expect at this point from Luis Severino? The guy is 2 years removed from playing in a professional baseball game. And then after that, you've got guys jostling for positions. What are you going to get out of Jamison Tyone? What are you going to get out of Jordan Montgomery? Are we going to see Davy Garcia? Domingo Germán is a year removed from being, from starting a game. So I think there's a lot of question marks surrounding, and the same thing for the Dodgers too. But look, Trevor Bauer did not have a good spring. I'm not saying that spring training tells the entire story, but that's a piece of it too. And I think, you need a guy like Cody Bellinger, Nick, as you said, to bounce back. And if a guy like Corey Seager can hit like the way he did in the postseason over the course of the season, and he had a very good opening day, there's a lot of good to come out of LA. But that's my prediction for the World Series at this point. But I do want to say, though, that I think that the White Sox and the Padres could be, and nothing to my New York Mets or to the Atlanta Braves, who I think are still the most established team in that National League East, at least right now, just based on the fact that they've now won it 2 years in a row. I think we have to watch out for the Padres and the White Sox just based off of, the hitters that they have. Granted, Chicago is without Eloy Jimenez, but they've got a lot of hitting that can make up for that. So we do again invite all of our viewers and followers and watchers and listeners to please comment. If you do tend to, as we're going to shift gears over here to football momentarily, if you do want to still drop in your World Series predictions, feel free to do so with any comments about the show. And we'd like to get them in and obviously hash out or analyze what your predictions might be and why you feel the way you do. So please feel free to drop a comment in the comment box, and we'll be happy to get to it. All right, gentlemen, let's move over to the National Football League, where the owners have approved the addition. So no longer will we have a 500 record in the National Football League in 2021. We're going to have an 18th week, a 17th regular season game to the schedule. So they'll remove one preseason game, but not to be full college football. The season will still start the second week Sunday of September. Labor Day weekend will still belong to college football, and week one will begin the second weekend of September, and that will push back everything, including the playoffs. So now the Super Bowl, which is scheduled to take place in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium on February 13th now, the day before Valentine's Day. So as a result, with the 17th game now, the NFC East will now actually travel to the AFC East. And as we look down the games, the New York Jets will host Joey Jarzynka's Philadelphia Eagles, while me, Rob, and Nick's New York Giants will travel to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Other games within that division will have within those two divisions, we'll have Washington traveling the first place, Washington Redskins traveling to the first place, and coming off their AFC Championship game appearance, the Buffalo Bills, and then the Dallas Cowboys playing the New England Patriots, which I'm sure will be destined for Sunday Night Football. So that will round out the NFC East versus AFC East, and then some other intriguing games on the schedule. You've got on the bottom row there, you've got Green Bay traveling to Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs, which we thought was expected to be the Super Bowl last year. You've got Tampa Bay, Brady traveling to Indianapolis. Usually you would think that's Brady versus Luck, but now we've got Brady versus Wentz. And then you've got the two loaded divisions where you have the AFC North taking on the NFC West, and you've got matchups like the Seahawks and the Steelers, the Rams and the Ravens, and the Cardinals and the Browns. So a lot of exciting games to watch. Obviously, all these games are not going to take place over the course of 1 week, gentlemen, but the 17th regular season game providing a lot of excitement around the NFL. So, Rob, I'm going to start with you here. Your thoughts on what you saw from that schedule? Are you excited about a 17th game, an 18th week to the season?
Yeah, I love it. You know what? I absolutely love it. More football is a great time. So you know what? I've always advocated for a shorter preseason because that's how important guys get hurt when you have too much preseason. So it's better to shorten that a little bit. I would have preferred it to go down to 2, but it's down to 3. That's okay. But nonetheless, yes, I think this is a great move for the NFL because it's just going to make the playoff race because it expanded. It only made sense to expand the season by another week. It's just going to make it that much more interesting. It's going to keep fans intact. It's going to be like, it's like, 16 games are down, but we got one more. We got one more shot because that could just be the difference. Granted, look, it's a good as you said, it's not going to take place in the 18th week because those are all interconference matchups. So they really aren't going to affect any like tie-breaking scenarios really. So we're going to see where they force these out because, the final week is always meant to be division rival week, which is typically where you find a lot of playoff pushes.
Yep.
So that's more than likely what we'll see. It'll be interesting to see where they squeeze this in, but overall, no, great move for the NFL. Love it. Couldn't be happier.
Nick, your thoughts on this 18th week of football now, and do you think down the road, this has been discussed for such a while now that we go to an 18-game season, 2 preseason games. Do you think that is more in the immediate future than we think?
I think so. It really depends on how the players feel about it. Now, players, they feel like they're being worked up enough as it is right now. But I think the fans are going to love it. Team owners are obviously going to see, more income from it. Another game in the schedule is going to add more fans to the seats. Hopefully, this year we'll see some of those ticket sales be influenced by that. But it really depends on, what the teams are going to be looking at record-wise coming into that Week 18. Obviously no fan likes 8-8 seasons. You either want to be above 500 or under 500.
It's true.
It's just in a league that the NFL, the draft is dependent on where your record falls. That's going to break the divide on where some of these teams are going to be drafted. And I think that's something that's undervalued when you look at this new idea of having 17 games. But yeah, like Rob said, it's going to add a lot more interest to those last remaining weeks ahead of the playoff picture. And, teams like New York, the Giants, and the Jets, they're trying to do their best to be as reputable as possible. The AFC East is not as top heavy as it used to be with Tom Brady and the Patriots, so they can potentially do well within their division. The Giants, right now, paper to win the NFC East. I know it's still early to say that, but with the weapons that they've added on offense, plus the addition of Adoree Jackson, you really have to look at this Giants team having to take a big step this season, and a lot of it's going to fall on Daniel Jones, unfortunately.
And John Mara has expressed that as well.
Yeah. So it's going to be a very important year for the Giants, and adding another game to it, I think it benefits them because I do see them being a team that may not have its fate decided until the last week or two of the season.
Yeah, it's very possible, and I think that for teams like the Giants, and for the Giants who have, and I'm saying to myself, what, we need to have Nick now on our NFC East preview show when that comes down, because clearly Nick's got his thoughts about the New York Giants for the 2021 season, and especially the return of hopefully NFL Comeback Player of the Year Saquon Barkley. But
be sure to wear that jersey. Leon will be on.
Gentlemen, Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the National Football League, is hoping to have full stadiums. I assume the hope is that everybody would be vaccinated or getting PCR tests, and that. But we're seeing more and more. We're seeing it slowly incorporated now in baseball. We saw it a lot last year. We really saw the NFL started last year in the state of Florida, where the Jaguars, the Bucks, and the Dolphins, were all bringing fans back, in pods. And then now we're seeing that now with the NBA, with the National Hockey League, with Major League Baseball, and we're seeing people, percentages of the stadium. But Rob, do you think that for a sport like football, where you go to MetLife Stadium as an example, and you have 50,000 fans sitting on top of each other and then standing on line for 2 hours to go to the bathroom, where you're after the game, where you're right on top, breathing on top of each other? I mean, is this a pipe dream for Roger Goodell, or is it actually feasible in your opinion?
No, you know what? I think it's feasible. Yeah. Wait, I mean, look, your accurate statement of how crappy MetLife Stadium is couldn't be true, but nonetheless, no, I do believe this is feasible, only because at the rate this country is going with getting people vaccinated, it's going so well right now. Everything is in great shape. The President of the United States is hoping to have everybody with at least one shot in the arm by May 1st. Or at the very least, everyone's supposed to be eligible by May 1st, and I think that's great. So I think, and it looks like every state is going to follow that. So what's great is that I think that allows this to be feasible. So what is going to do is, I think, well, let's take MetLife Stadium for example. It's April 2nd, and they currently have 30% capacity, which out of 85,000 people is quick math here, if I can actually pull that off.
Almost 30.
Almost 30, Nick?
Yeah, just about 25,500 people is where the exact number comes to from that. So that's how many people would be able to be there if there was a game tomorrow. So the fact that it's already at 30% is a great sign, because it doesn't look like anybody's rolling back anymore, because there aren't a lot of surges, because the shots are in the arm. So because of that, I do actually see this as a feasible option. I don't know if in certain states, I don't know if 100% is going to be right there in week one, but it's certainly going to be there within the season. Everybody's going to have a full house within the season.
Nick, you're someone who frequently visits the state of Florida. You have family down there in the Miami area. So as one person's opinion, I thought when, the rules were maybe a little more relaxed in Florida, where the Jaguars, the Buccaneers, and the Dolphins were allowed to have fans in the stadium. I thought maybe last fall, it was a little early to start incorporating that. But do you agree with Rob's point with the number of fans, like with what Roger's saying in terms of having full stadiums for the start of the 2021 season?
So I agree in where Rob discusses where, the nation's on a very uphill trend with people getting vaccinated. You see a lot more people starting to feel a little more comfortable with the vaccines, which is also great news. You're going to have states that are going to be more lenient with those restrictions. Florida, Texas, those were two states that, want as much normalcy as possible. And I think those states will have 100% capacity for September, whether it's the right decision or not. It's just the track that they've been on since the Super Bowl, to be honest with you. I really think by the time it's September, New York, New Jersey, since they've been a little bit more stricter with restrictions, I think 50% is even a win for them right now at September. It's not risky. I think it's enough people to have like an atmosphere for an opening day. Granted, it's not 80,000, but 40,000 will make noise. 40,000 makes noise in Citi Field and Yankee Stadium. So
sure,
it's plenty of noise to be in the stadium for sure. But yeah, I think by the time the season is over, we could get to 100%. Absolutely. But we have to continue to be where we're at with vaccinations, and we have to limit the variants and the surges that are going to come with this virus. It's unfortunate, but that's how science works. And if we don't stay on top of it, then we, risk having some setbacks.
I think we're all hoping that, especially just because of the way football is in this country and how everybody is tuned in to whether it be Red Zone or their favorite team at 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock Eastern time on a Sunday. It shows how important it is that we all try to return to some kind of normalcy and really try to get fans back in the stands, but do so in the safest way possible. Want to talk a little bit NFL draft here. And by NFL draft, we saw a couple of weeks ago, we saw a lot of movement early on in the draft order where we're seeing Miami move down, the Eagles move down, the 49ers, who we expect Jimmy Garoppolo to be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers on opening in week 1. It seems that they have a lot of interest in that quarterback at a BYU named Zack Wilson. But supposedly the Eagles were really the first team that called in, with interest about trading it with Miami for that number 3 pick to try to move up and grab Zack Wilson themselves. Now, I don't know maybe what the issue is with Jalen Hurts because he showed a lot of promise. So I really don't understand what the issue would be there. I guess that's a story for another day, and maybe when Joey's on the show with us. But Twitterverse has just been salivating over Zack Wilson's pro day. I mean, when you look at the top quarterbacks that are expected to go, at least within the first few picks, you think Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. Trevor Lawrence playing at Clemson, Justin Fields playing at Ohio State. Both teams went to the college football playoff. Whereas BYU, as an independent, formerly of the Mountain West, you think of Mountain West and you think of a school like Wyoming, who only a few years ago had an underappreciated quarterback named Josh Allen, who's worked out pretty good now for the Buffalo Bills. Nick, I'm going to start with you here, considering your experience with Fansided and the fact that you write for college football. So obviously Zack Wilson is an expected first round pick, and so much so maybe that the Jets might inquire about taking him at 2. But is there a red flag? And I'm going back to that Josh Allen point I just made, but I want to ask you: is there a red flag considering that he's not a Power 5 QB?
I think there is, to be honest with you. I know he's a little bit undersized. He's 6'2", 6'3" at the tallest. He's not, Josh Allen in regards to physicality and his build. Does he have the arm? Yes, he does. But again, the caliber play that he played at BYU in regards to its opponents, probably not, at the level where most scouts, looking ahead into this draft will probably wanted to see. Did he play some pretty good opponents throughout his collegiate career? Yes, he did. But it wasn't a consistent basis. I think he's got more to prove than guys like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. And personally, I do think those are the 2 top quarterbacks heading into this draft if I were a GM heading a team heading into the draft. So Zack Wilson, he does have potential. I do think he has to do a little bit more in proving that he's, capable of taking over a program and, running with the starting job. Now, do I think he is going to be a starter year 1? I don't think he's ready for that yet. Trevor Lawrence, yes. Justin Fields, maybe. Zack Wilson, maybe. It's not really what we've seen over the last couple of years with the Baker Mayfields, the Sam Darnolds taking over week 1. Those guys are definitely going to need to progress a little bit and mature as a professional before getting that first real opportunity to be a starter for a long term.
Rob, you watch quite a little bit of college football yourself. So your take on Zack Wilson, do you think he's deserving of a top 3 pick, nonetheless, maybe even the number 2 pick right after Trevor Lawrence.
The way he's looked since he left college, absolutely. I mean, this guy is showing that he's ready to go. He's, sometimes, you can't really judge a play on whether or not a player's going to be a superstar until he plays. It's just that simple. You can do as much as you can on paper, but nonetheless, I think this kid is definitely very good. He showed it in his pro day. He proved why he's going to be a good, very good quarterback in this league. It's just going to come down to who's going to take it. That's the great thing about the NFL draft. After Trevor Lawrence goes to the Jaguars, this draft is wide open. Nobody knows what's going to happen, really, and that's what makes it exciting. Because people wondering, are the Jets going to draft Zack Wilson? Are they going to get a new quarterback? Or are they going to stick with Sam Darnold and maybe get him that elite protection with Penei Sewell? So that's another question that fans have to ask. But yeah, San Francisco is trying to make their moves because it looks like Jimmy G's time in San Francisco is coming to an end. So they're gonna get a quarterback at number 3. It's just a matter of who. I don't know if it's gonna be Zack Wilson. They obviously want it to be Zack Wilson based on everything we're hearing out there. It all comes down to the New York Jets and whether or not they're sticking with Darnold.
Well, that's a great question there, Rob, because that brings me to my next point is it seems more and more that the New York Jets are going to take Zack Wilson with that number 2 overall pick, because why in the world would the Eagles have not traded up with the Dolphins when they seemed like there was a connection there, that there was a making of a trade, and maybe for some reason Joe Douglas, the Eagles knowing Joe Douglas being the former assistant GM under Howie Roseman, made a call to the Eagles and said, we're taking him at 2, so maybe you don't want to trade up to 3, but the San Francisco 49ers have done it anyway, hoping that maybe the Jets will take Justin Fields at number 2 and Zack Wilson at number 3. But Nick, Trevor Lawrence appears to be the unanimous number 1, and even more so just because Urban Meyer, the new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, has just been showing his hand and saying at this point that they're going to take Trevor Lawrence. It's just a matter of when the Jaguars go on the clock in a couple of weeks. But do you feel, and this is I guess a 2-part question, do you feel that the Jets are going to take Wilson at number 2? Because has this team even done enough to surround Sam Darnold with the weapons he needs to succeed?
I personally believe that the Jets should be backing Sam Darnold and trying to progress that route. I think they're a couple pieces away from really being a team that could contend for an AFC title. Have they shown that in the recent years? No, the record hasn't shown that either. But I do think that the Jets are in a good position no matter who they draft. If they go that quarterback route, whether it's Wilson or Fields, they're going to get names and they're going to get offers for Sam Darnold. He's obviously not going to be the guy that's going to stay there and be a backup for a first-round draft pick. So they have a lot of leverage. If you're Joe Douglas, you definitely want to see what you can get for Darnold ahead of the draft and then go with your rookie. But I really do think that the Jets should back Darnold. Get your guy who could either be a potential playmaker in Kyle Pitts or get your guy who can protect the line in Sewell. I think those are the 2 obvious picks for me. But, every NFL team, if you have a top 3 pick, they're thinking quarterback.
Yep.
That's what it's like right now. And if you're a Jets fan, you're probably feeling that way this year too. Unfortunately for Darnold, he really hasn't had the opportunity to progress in New York, but this could be the year that he could do it.
Yeah, Nick, to just bounce off that while we still have some time, I think personally that shows Miami's commitment to Tua Tagovailoa right there by trading out of number 3, because I think you make a good point there. When you have such a high pick and you have a quarterback class of this level, it's crazy, but it very well could go quarterback in the top 3. So and Miami is showing that they're happy with Tua. Yeah. They're not going to be making a move. They're not making a move for Deshaun Watson. So and they don't need a top 3 pick because they're in a great place right now. But so they backed up a little bit. And not only that, they're only drafting at number 6 now. So it's not like they fell out of the top 10 anyway. So they're still going to get themselves a great player. They could get someone like a Kyle Pitts, a Jamar Chase, a Devonta Smith. Get a nice big weapon.
Waddle's on the board. I wouldn't be surprised if Waddle goes top 10. I really do think the Jets have a great opportunity to give that piece that Darnold needs, whether it's those 4 guys that we mentioned.
Well, that's my question really to the two of you is, and I feel like this is the ongoing rotating wheel that we see that is the New York Jets and their front office, no matter who the general manager is, because the same two owners sit in that owner's box every single Sunday. That do you? I mean, because I know in my opinion, and watching Jet games week after week after week with my in-laws who are diehard Jet fans, and and trying to explain and say to myself that why is it that the Jets at this point feel the need to start back over? I mean, do they feel, is there some part of them that feels that they have put, that maybe in some way, shape, or form that they've put enough at this point around Sam Darnold to succeed? I just really don't see it.
Yeah, Ian, I think that Sam Darnold has just not been me personally, I don't think he's been given enough weapons, enough chances out there. Like, look, Darnold, he wasn't the greatest quarterback out of college.
No, he had an interception problem in college.
He sure did, and it certainly has translated into the NFL. But the Jets really haven't given him a whole lot to work with. But now it seems like they're at least trying to do that, because they got Corey Davis. That's a prime wide receiver right there, a go-to number one guy finally. But where's the protection been? Aside from Daniel Jones and the Giants, I can't think of a quarterback who's pretty much gotten lit up every game more than Sam Darnold. He gets no protect. The teams in New York do not have good protection. So you got to that's where a guy like
did you watch Russell the Seattle Seahawks offensive line last year?
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, look. I mean, yeah, I sure did that one game. Against the Giants. But no,
well, we'll get into Colt McCoy in a second. But go ahead.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I think that if I'm the Jets, it's a tough call, because you're not going to get a quarterback class like this ever. Not for a while. Certainly not next year. So you have to make the call. Do you trust Darnold by going with by either getting him another weapon or getting him elite protection? And with Saywell, you get elite protection. I promise you that. So it's a coin flip. If it's me, I give Darnold the weapons or protection and go for it.
Nick, do you agree with Rob's point to saying that this could be, the last year for maybe a couple of years where maybe that elite quarterback in terms of that wide class is out there?
Obviously, it's been very quarterback dominant the last couple of years. Am I going to say that we're going to be in a little bit of a lull with quarterbacks coming in? I don't want to say that, because there are some pretty good quarterbacks in college football that we're trying to forget. And one of those guys is a Miami Hurricane guy, De'Aaron King. Depending on how the knee rehabs and the season that he has at Miami, he could be a top 5 quarterback coming in. And there's always guys that literally fall under the radar. Your Trey Lances, your Zack Wilsons, guys that, not a lot of buzz coming in previous to 2020. So every team is going to be in a situation where they're going to have a top 5 pick and they may be thinking quarterback. It's just the way that the draft has gone the last 5-10 years. So I don't want to say that in the next couple of years of the draft are going to be, a black quarterback dominance. We're not going to see some Geno Smith quarterback draft soon. But if I'm the Jets right now, I'm really, really considering either getting a pass protector or trading down so you can get one of those wide receivers and add to the wide receiver class.
Yeah, no, it's with the Jets. So because they're talking about Trey Lance potentially out of North Dakota State at this point as a top 10 draft pick. I mean, there's talks about guys like Devontae Smith potentially even falling, in the lap of the Giants maybe at 11. I mean, it's going to make for a very exciting. I see Rob's reaction. I feel the same way, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind a guy like a Penei Sewell falling if guys are going to keep taking quarterbacks and skill players and really stabilizing even more that offensive line. But Nick, I want to follow up here again just to continue with our point about the Jets. So do you think so obviously we agree, I think we all agree here that Sam Darnold deserves his shot. So should the pick for them at this point be a Sewell to at least play on the other side of Becton, or should they be looking elsewhere?
Either Sewell or if you get really risky at one of those wide receivers, that's my definitely try to give as much confidence and motivation to Darnold as you can. He hasn't had the easiest couple of years. He had the long bout with meningitis. He had it out for a while, and that definitely affected his season. And he hasn't really had the help, neither players or coaching. Adam Gase was clearly not the answer, and Todd Bowles wasn't an offensive-minded coach either. So, he hasn't really had the best hand coming in his NFL career. Now, this could be the year where all that changes. Now, if they want to protect him or they give him another additional target, that's the Jets doing what they can to really try and progress Darnold as an elite, hopefully long-term quarterback for the Jets.
I don't disagree. Just approaching about 8:40 here on the Primetime Rundown. Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, Nick Diamanis here with you on this Friday evening. We can't thank all of you enough for spending your Friday evening with us. And don't forget to subscribe to us here on the Primetime Rundown by either downloading on Apple or Google Podcasts or by subscribing on iHeartRadio or Spotify, or just search in the search bar on YouTube, I-95 Sports Network, and you can check in on all of our programming that way. We're a few minutes early from our 8:45 sports update, but we're going to get to it now. A couple of other pieces that have been going on around the professional sports world. The hero that Rob was alluding to earlier, talking about the Seattle game, Colt McCoy, his 1-year stint with the New York Giants is now over. The Giants only about a week ago had signed, maybe a little more than that, had signed Mike Glennon now to be Daniel Jones' backup. Colt McCoy will now go on his way to Arizona to back up Kyler Murray. So he will forever be remembered as the guy who delivered the win in Seattle that kept the Giants' playoff hopes alive in 2020. And if not for a fraudulent team out of Philadelphia, sorry, Joey, the Giants might have been in the playoffs at 6-10. But, I think we can all say, I think for the 3 Giant fans on this show, that at 6-10, they just did not belong there, even though they probably played some of their best football in the final 5 to 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, they were hot on the stretch.
But go ahead, Rob, if you want to jump in about Colt McCoy.
Yeah, I mean, look, good. It's good. He gets to keep his career going. I mean, look, unless Kyler goes down, he's never gonna, or the Cardinals are up by 30, he's never gonna play. But nonetheless, it's good to see that. You love to see some of these old timers keeping their careers alive. And you know what? Hey, Arizona's a good team. I don't know how much he's going to contribute, but they could make some noise. They're certainly in the playoff hunt. They might make it, and they might make some noise too. They are stacked right now. J.J. Watt there, shoring up that defensive line. They've got Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins. The Cardinals are a fun team right now, and it's good to see Colt McCoy a part of that.
And don't forget AJ Green either. They're not doing too bad for themselves in that receiving core. But you're talking about history. I mean, I was there the night Colt McCoy got drafted in 2010 in the 3rd round. I actually left the draft right after Colt McCoy got drafted because the whole place went crazy when Colt McCoy finally got drafted by the Browns in the 3rd round, and then everybody exited because everybody was like, "Okay, the draft is now officially over." Too bad I wasn't there the night before when the Broncos traded up for Tebow. But hey, beggars can't be choosers after all. Nick, the other piece of our sports update here is the fact that Marlins Park has actually been renamed Lone Depot Park right before opening day, and unveiled that renaming with a 1-0 loss yesterday to the Tampa Bay Rays. So you being the Miami guy that you are you happy that they renamed Marlins Park and found somebody to buy the naming rights for the stadium?
Sure. Is it going to bring people to the ballpark? No. There's a million different things to do in Miami, even throughout pandemic that we've been seeing in spring break, unfortunately. But Miami's just a long history of stadiums being, renamed after so many different people or different brands. You had Landshark, Hard Rock right now, the old
Joe Robbie, right?
The old Joe Robbie Stadium, exactly. So professional sports wise, it just doesn't do it in Miami right now. As long as the Dolphins and the Heat aren't reputable, it's all about the Miami Hurricanes. To be honest with you, it's the big city that loves its college sports. Now, Miami Hurricanes football, baseball, that's going to get people interested. There's probably more games at Marklight Stadium that are packed than as opposed to Lone Depot Stadium. Not much doing it for Marlins fans right now. Can they get there? Yeah, absolutely. With Derek Jeter and his team involved, they proved it last year. They have something going with their farm system. And if you look at their roster right now, I would say 90% of those guys are under 30, and about half of those guys are really right there on the cusp of hitting their prime. That rotation with Sixto Sanchez, Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, those are guys that are going to be legit MLB starters for a long time. So the Marlins just have to add pieces together. They're going to have to scratch and claw like Tampa does, Oakland, just try to get those rental guys and see what they can do with them. And they did with guys like Aguilar, Corey Dickerson. They've added some of those names to keep that lineup somewhat viable in the NL East. But is the naming rights going to bring more people to the stands? I think at the end of the day, probably not. But it is Miami. People want to be outside and do things in Miami, so we'll see.
And I'm sure the part that always gets the University of Miami fans is the fact that Marlins Park is built on top of the old Orange Bowl.
Oh, yeah. So if wants to give some of the Miami citizens some money back for building that fraudulent stadium, then maybe they'll get those tickets back. But we've just seen time and time again all these professional organizations really trying to bang on, the cities on making the public pay for these stadiums. It's unfortunate that you see it, but I'm happy as a Yankees fan, a Giants fan. These are organizations that basically put their money where their mouth was, and they paid for those stadiums.
Yep.
And they did it the right way. I feel bad for a lot of people living in Miami. My grandparents, for example, they literally gave up their season tickets just because of the stadium. They loved that Orange Bowl, and they would have easily loved to see that get renovated and seen the upgrades as opposed to having a new stadium for baseball. It just wasn't the right location, wasn't the right timing, and it was a money grab, and it really hasn't done much since. So, Miami baseball is going to be where it is for foreseeable future, and hopefully they get some wins in and have some seasons where fans get more interested.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're just about coming to a close here. We're a few minutes early of our usual 2 hour or 2 hour plus mark here on the Primetime Rundown, but we always do not want to forget about, we haven't done it in about a month, but we're going to start off with Rob here. Who are your kudos going to this week, sir?
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, but today it was announced this morning. Coach Bill Self, Kansas University, was given a lifetime contract extension. And honestly, you know what? Good for him. Good for him. I mean, look, he's certainly brought a lot of success to the University of Kansas. The Jayhawks have been a winning franchise ever since he got there. So it's honestly, I'm shocked it took this long. But so after 5 years, it's just going to constantly roll over into an additional year. And it goes until he decides to retire. And he's not that old either. He's only I think he's only like 62, I believe. So he's going to be there for a while longer, and Kansas is going to keep enjoying this great success that they've had ever since he got there.
Nick, are you? I saw you smiling there. Are you not such a fan of what's going on in Rock Chalk Jayhawk land, or what?
They keep their guy, I guess. Had there been times where the outsider looks at the Kansas program and realize that there's some shady things going on, whether it's with their presidents, Les Miles now, just a bunch of different wacky things going on in Kansas. So I guess they have their guy. I don't see another face like a Bill Self coming in and doing what he's done with that program. So in a way, it keeps the fans happy, and in a way, keeps them a very competitive team nationally. So I guess it's the right move for them.
Nick, on that point, who are your kudos going to?
So I want to do two quick ones.
Sure, go ahead.
The first one, I'm going to praise your Syracuse Orange basketball team. Team that I thought might have saw the outside in heading to Selection Sunday, but they found a way to make the tournament. And just like Jim Boeheim does, plays a potential, stuffed 2-3 zone that stifles a lot of teams, stifled San Diego State. And they made it all the way to the Sweet 16 as a double-digit seed again. And that's just the kudos of the system that Boeheim's put in place. But on top of that, you have to include some praise for Buddy Boeheim as well. The son who knows the history of the program, who's been, entrapped with that whole Syracuse Orange basketball tradition that now he has a name in March Madness glory too. And to be the guy that literally brought them to the Sweet 16, shot
Yep.
them out of the ball in those first 2 games, along with Gerard and the middle of the road guys that they had, their role players. It's just a fun team to watch, and I think Syracuse, as long as Jim Boeheim is there, they're going to be a reputable team in the ACC. The second one, I'm going to keep it in the family. I want to give a shout out to the Ryder Bronx baseball team. My brother is a baseball player on that team, but a team that was preseason ranked to be the 7th out of 11 teams in the MAC have started their year 7-3. They're doing all the right things. So hopefully they keep it going. They have a 4-game series with the Manhattan Jaspers this weekend. So a team that they can definitely grab a couple more wins in that 4-game series and keep it going, guys. 7-3 is a great start.
Well, best of luck to your brother and to the Bronx baseball team down in Lawrenceville. Wishing them all the best of luck in the MAC. And to your point about Syracuse, just riding on the shoulders of Buddy Boeheim. And I thought seeing that video at the 2003 National Championship with him and Mello was really very cool, and brought back some memories of me watching that game from my dorm room my freshman year of college. And I think they're in a little bit of a crossroads right now, Syracuse, because Kadary Richmond and Alan Griffin are both now in the transfer portal. So we'll see what comes of that. I know they one of the Marquette transfers just went to Syracuse, so we'll see what comes of that. But those are a couple of the key role players. The fact that Quincy Guerrier is still there is going to be a big part of that as Buddy Boeheim comes back for his 4th and final year, and we'll see at the end of next year, because I believe Boeheim is 18 wins now after all those wins got vacated, is short of 1,000. I believe he's 18 wins short. So
he should get there.
Yeah, he should get there next year. And he did say that, or the rumors were that after both his sons graduated, because his other son is at Cornell, and they're both going to be entering their final year of eligibility. I believe because his older son at Cornell is going to get a year back because of the waiver eligibility regarding a missed season. They'll both finish up next year, and maybe once Jim Boeheim hits 1,000, that'll be the end of it for him as well. We'll see. My kudos actually go out to a team that we mentioned at the start of the broadcast, the UCLA men's basketball team, and head coach Mick Cronin. When you look at the big picture again, and this is me kind of reiterating what I mentioned at the start of the broadcast, this is a team that everyone felt got in because of the name, because of the 4 letters that sit on their chest, and because of who that coach was that won as many national championships, because UCLA and Michigan State would make for a great game on TBS at 9:55 in the first 4. And, they've defied the odds. They've defied the doubters, and they were supposed to lose to Michigan State, and they were trailing late. They came back and won, and now they've gone from first 4 to final 4, which is just an incredible accomplishment. And now they have the opportunity to knock off the undefeated Gonzaga Bulldogs and prevent them from still winning that national championship that really Gonzaga needs to get them over that hump. But I want to wish everybody just to have a great watch of the Final Four that's coming up, the national championship game on Monday. So it really should be a lot of fun, and we'll look forward to recapping it with you all next Friday right here on the Primetime Rundown. Nick Diamanis, ladies and gentlemen, writes for Fansided, former athletic communications grad assistant at St. John's University. Nick, we can't thank you enough for coming on this evening with us and for really just offering up all the knowledge that you did. It's truly appreciated.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and hopefully this isn't the first and only time.
No, it definitely will not be. And with the way you were talking about the Giants, we might have to have you on again down the road when we start previewing the football season, if not sooner.
St. New Jersey will be on.
Rob, any last few notes before we close up the night here, sir?
Another great show. Happy to bring the audience our live content once again. It's good to be back live once again, and can't wait to do it again next week.
Yeah, we're very excited that we're back live here with you all, and hope you guys all enjoyed the 3 specials that we aired. The first one being our March Madness special. So if anybody wants to go back and watch that broadcast, you can, as well as our free agency special for the NFL. And then if you were tuning in on Wednesday, you saw our opening day special with myself, Rob DeLuca, and Joey Jarzynka and Casey Bryan as well. But before we go, ladies and gentlemen, we wanted to let you know what's coming up on the Eastern Observer. We have amped up your wrestling fix with the daily wrestling news show with Minutes to Bell Time's Ryan Joy every Monday through Thursday, starting at 10 a.m. And then don't forget, this Tuesday night, the guys are back as they are every Tuesday. That's Al Carl, John Smith, Tyler Adele, Ryan Joy, John DeConi, and Gary Miheffi for the Essential Wrestling Podcast, with coverage beginning at 6 p.m. And then the wrestling doesn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen, as the main event of the year for the WWE. WrestleMania is coming up on April 11th. So on Saturday, April 10th, the guys will have their WrestleMania preview for you at 12 o'clock, and they'll be getting you ready for wrestling's main event. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, Joey, Rob, myself, we'll be back next Friday with episode 53, number 53 of the Primetime Rundown next Friday, April 9th, right here on the Eastern Observer. And all programming can also be seen on the I-95 Sports Network and Zingo Television Channel 198. And be sure, once again, please subscribe to us on Spotify and iHeartRadio, or download via the iOS or Google Play stores, or on YouTube. Please search I-95 Sports Network. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, from my co-host, Rob DeLuca, our special guest, Nick Diamanis, I'm Ian Schraier. This is the Primetime Rundown, and we'll see you next time.